Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to the Ultimate SEO Guide. And today we're going to be talking all about SEO reporting. We have a truly international tea time SEO today. I'm SEO Joe Blogs dialing in from Barcelona. We have Carrie dialing in from Putney, Barb in from Las Vegas, so it's early for her, 8 a.m. Steph over in Basingstoke, and Christopher over in Denmark. So really treat tea time international, and I hope everyone's got their tea and snack ready, or maybe a coffee. So today's one session is about SEO reporting, and I know that it may be seen as perhaps maybe a bit of a simple topic, but the truth is that everything changes quite quickly in the SEO world. And it's really important to not forget the basics and also to try and automate some things. Reporting can take many hours, and today I'm really pleased that we have Steph Whately, Christopher Hofman Laursen, and Barb Davids, who is going to show us some great tips all about how we can save time, be efficient, but also show those key insights to not just the SEO managers, but also the board level. So they're now going to introduce themselves, and I'm just going to pass over to our first speaker, Steph.
Hi, everybody. For those who don't know me, my name is Steph Whately. I'm an SEO manager at Blu-ray in Reading, where I've been for about 2.5 years. I've got a really great team there, specialising in all things SEO. I also have worked in digital marketing for just a little over 6 years, but I specialised in SEO for the last 2. My favourite things are finding efficiencies, analysis, and learning new things, which I like to try and make time for as much as possible. I think my personal motto would be, there must be a faster way about pretty much everything in life. I think it's definitely true in terms of SEO reporting as well. And I also love crochet. So if you ever want to talk crochet, hit me up.
Yes, hello, my name is Christopher Hofman. I'm here in Copenhagen, working at the agency Impact Extend, doing a lot of SEO. And yeah, I've been on the Tea Time SEO once before. It was a great experience. So I'm back again here. During lockdown, I've published a blog post at Moz about SEO sprints. I was also nominated for an SEO sprint case at the Nordic SEO campaign 2020. And currently, I'm pretty excited about working with automating SEO tasks using Python scripts. So that's what I'm doing at the moment.
Oh, I think you're muted, Barb.
I tried so hard to remember that too, but anyways, I'm Barb. I'm owner of Compass Digital Strategies and do SEO, helping small businesses get more website traffic and more leads. I've been in digital marketing for over 20 years. I only recently started my business full-time back in November. So lockdown was pretty interesting. Have changed my perspective a little bit. So offering more like courses and like downloads, things that small business owners can do on their own just because of budget cuts and things like that. And I do run marathons, 26 miles. One year I did like 3 or 4 or something like that. So that's it.
Well, that's quite impressive. And Barb, you were talking about, recent course that you have completed. Please feel free to also share that in the chat.
Okay.
I also wanted to say a big thank you to everyone who's come. So we have a lot of people from Blu-ray here, Lucy, Naomi, Nikki, and thank you also to Charlotte, Nikki, Reeve, Helena, Stella, Kirsten, Lucy, Tamara. So great to see everyone here. Carl as well, Lawrence. So if you're enjoying the show today, like the video, and we have a lot more Tea Time SEOs. So do subscribe to the channel. Carl, Karen and I will leave you now, and we'll be back later on for Q&A. So any questions you have, please drop them in the chat. Thank you.
Alrighty, okay, so I have a few tips for you today. I could obviously talk about this for about 15 million years, So it's really hard to kind of pick my top three. But the first one is something I want to talk about because it's something that's kind of come into my life during the lockdown period, when I've been asking myself that question of how to do things faster and more efficiently. So the first thing is, if you're working with a lot of data, it's a really great idea to get acquainted with BigQuery. So BigQuery, for those who don't know, is part of Google's cloud services. It's all hosted in the cloud, which means it's really, really fast, which is great for working with huge data sets. I think I saw somebody apply a filter to something like 15 million rows in about 4 seconds. So if you've ever been stuck in Google Sheets and just wanting to die, BigQuery will be a huge thing for you, and it will improve your life immeasurably. Who knows what you can achieve if you start to save that time. So it uses SQL or SQL, which stands for Structured Query Language. The great thing about SQL is the fact that it's quite human-oriented in terms of coding language. It's not something that's very, very complicated to learn, and it's really well-resourced on the internet as well. So there's so many places that you can practice or pick up tips. It's also really, really cheap. I think it's something like $5 per terabyte, and you actually get given an allowance when you sign up anyway for free on Google. So for the first kind of million queries you'll be running, unless you're working with absolutely ginormous data sets, it's going to be super, super cheap, if not free. So that's great. The other great thing about it is the fact that it's really integrated within all the kind of programs that we use as SEOs. So it works really well with Google Sheets. It works with Google Data Studio, Google Drive. And if you have something that's really, really big, you can actually upload it to cloud storage, and it obviously links to that really well as well. The one drawback I would probably say about BigQuery is just the fact that it's not very good for exploratory tasks. So if you're on kind of a mission to kind of achieve something and you know what it is you want to get out of BigQuery, then it's really straightforward. But if it's something where you're not entirely sure what you're looking for, sometimes it helps to have a bit of an idea first, or to break that data down and remove as much kind of excess columns that aren't really relevant to you as possible. I'll give you one example of where it could be really useful. Excuse me. Is where, oh my God. Excuse me. One example of where it would be really useful is if you had, say, for example, lots of log file data, and you wanted to combine that with Google Analytics data, so performance metrics and things like that. And you also wanted to combine it with crawl, so whether you're using Screaming Frog or another provider, that's a lot of data. And it's really easy to kind of mesh that up and create your own kind of bespoke data source and work with it really quickly. Next slide, please. Cool. All right, my second tip, again, is about saving time, and it's really about automation. It's definitely something that is going to save us a lot of time. It does involve a little bit of setup at the start, which is a bit of a sort of an investment on your time, but you will get it back if you set it up efficiently. So some ideas of how you can automate reporting is setting up Google Analytics alerts. So that might be something like if conversions drop week on week by 30+%, or month on month, whichever one works for you, you can get that kind of automated notification. You can also set up all kinds of automation in terms of report delivery. So if you have a lot of stakeholders, you can actually amend within Data Studio, for example, you can amend the time range for the report so that it automatically updates itself and you don't have to kind of intervene. And it can be delivered to the stakeholders at the exact same time of every week, ready for their Monday meetings or reports and things like that. So that's really, really helpful. And the other thing is using APIs. So I'm aware that like pretty much everything we use has got an API. Some are cheaper than others. The main tool that we use at Blu-ray is Google Data Studio. And the reason I really like that in particular is just because it pretty much connects to everything. The only thing, if you have a lot of bureaucracy or you're struggling to kind of get the buy-in or the budget for certain APIs, like I know some are really expensive, you can actually, if you have an account with them, you can download the data that you need to use and then actually connect Google Sheets as a data source within Data Studio. And that can save you a lot of time and kind of circumnavigate that issue a little bit, which is really, really helpful. All right, my last tip, which I've weirdly named as number 2, but it really is number 3, is that organic users and pages are not all the same. A wise person once said that like aggregate data is crap, and I fully agree. It's really not going to tell you anything. You really do need to dig deeper, which again can be an automated way of doing it. You can set up segments and you can set up different filters and things like that, and then use those as appropriate with the data that you're working with. But there really is no point in just saying, this is the bounce rate for my website, because it really doesn't mean anything. You're going to have different areas of your site which are going to have very different visitors, very different actions and behavior. So for example, if you have a blog, that's going to have a very different user profile in terms of behavioral metrics to transactional or converting product pages, for example, and they need to be treated slightly differently. Another great thing about Google Analytics in particular is that obviously it comes with some inbuilt segments that you can set up your own ones, depending on what your business KPIs are or anything in particular that you want to look at in more detail. So for example, it could be days since last visit. It could be how many visits before converting. Things like that can really give you a lot more information to actually build actions and insights out of. So it's worth exploring a little bit in terms of how you set up those segments and how they interact with your goals and your KPIs. The last thing is to actually look for patterns that cross over with above the line efforts. And this comes back to quite an important principle of reporting, which is communication. It's not enough to just report in isolation and say these are the results. It's really important to understand kind of wider macro factors that are affecting your target market, that are affecting the way that people interact with your website. So it's definitely worth trying to get as much knowledge, especially if you work in an agency, for example, where you might not have those conversations with a wider group of stakeholders with your client's business. It's really important to say, hey, what are the marketing activity you're doing right now? Do you have a lot of PR on? Are you doing any kind of public awareness campaigns and things like that? Because all of those things will affect organic traffic. So it's not enough to say, we did this, we had a 45% uplift in organic visits. It actually might be related to a myriad of factors. So definitely worth looking at those kind of patterns and that cross collaboration with different stakeholders. That's the bulk of it from me. So I'm going to hand over now. Thank you.
Thank you, Steph. Yeah, I'm actually going to dive into some of the aspects that you touch upon. So I think it's a good conversation that we have here. I have 2 tips for you, and basically my first tip is actually that you should use target metrics instead of comparing year over year in dashboards. The reason is that, imagine that you have a top management comparing this year's numbers with last year's instead of looking at what is actually the budget, what is the forecast, right? So that's something which goes all the way down in the organization. So we also have sales and marketing. They're not looking at last year's figures. They're looking at what is the budget, what are the targets that we're going to reach. So actually, when we're doing dashboards, we're actually setting up forecasts, and that could be, of course, impressions and traffic, etc. But also, as I will talk about later, some more relevant metrics, such as for instance, money. How many orders do we get? How many leads do we get? What's the conversion rate, average order value, and all this. And when you are looking at target metrics instead of year over year, you will actually have a chance to move much faster if you're seeing, okay, we're going south with some of these numbers. You can go in early and try to adjust so you can reach these targets. And of course, I mean, if you're just looking year over year and we're doing 10% better than last year, it might look great from one aspect, but if the growth expectations are 20%, then we're actually off target. So that is actually my first tip: use target metrics in your dashboards. So my second tip, it's a bigger topic. It's also one of the reasons why I'm actually here today. You know, apart from liking the format, I see really that SEO reporting is so much more than just showing clicks, impressions, and whatever metric you have in Google Analytics made for other SEO people. What we really need to understand is, you know, what is SEO reporting? You know, what is it that we're going to report about and to whom? Because as I see it, there are definitely three types of people interested in SEO reporting, and reporting should be different for these. So first off, we have the C-suite, right? So C-suite, what are they looking at? They're especially looking at business numbers. So what's important here is, of course, to say, yes, we want to report on rankings or traffic or whatever, but what does this mean when you look into how much money you can make, right? So that's really important to look at. What's a turnover generated from SEO? What are leads generated? What are even micro conversions? So that's the first part. Then of course we can go into a little bit more deep dive into what marketing is interested in. And marketing, what they're interested in is, of course, one thing is, of course, brand awareness. You know, are we being talked more about? Are people searching more for our brand than before? Does it have any effect on Google when we are running a marketing campaign? Can we see any effects there? It's also, of course, you know, what they love is actually to talk about traffic share. You know, are we beating the competition out there? Are we taking up more space than the typical competitors? So that's you can say these are different metrics to report upon. And the third part is, now we're more into the operations part of thing, right? So here we can talk more about clicks, impressions, rankings, etc. But what I see here is also that, yes, of course, if I'm a consultant and I have a customer, of course, on one hand, I need to show these SEO reports to them so they can stay informed if the performance is good. But actually, it's, you know, SEO reporting is much more than that. It's also a way for us to say, you know, with this data, I know what to do. You know, I can understand that if we're getting these much clicks, if we're seeing these keywords performing better or whatever, I know in what direction I should work at. So really trying to aim for a dashboard to be operational. One of the ways that we're trying to do this is actually to say, okay, if we look at keywords, for instance, we might have a list of keywords that we're following. Then we go in and blend the data, the typical organic traffic data with, for instance, conversions from Google Ads. You know, these search queries you can see directly in Google Ads. You can see if they're converting or if they have led to assisted conversions. And this will tell me actually if I can add this data to my rankings, then it will tell me more about if these keywords are interesting to go for from a business perspective. Secondly, of course, I can also say, for instance, if I have landing pages or inspiration pages not performing as well, I could actually go in and put in demographic data in here. You know, am I writing content for people at the age of plus 50, and I go in and see that the bounce rate is high for this page, and it's actually 20 to 30-year-olds who are looking at this info. I can again get some feedback from my dashboard. So I think it's, just to sum it up on this part, I think it's very important that we ask ourselves the question, you know, what is it that we're going to show, and what are they taking away from it, apart from knowing, okay, it works fine on the SEO in our little SEO silo. How can we actually use these data from a full business perspective? And just a little extra tip as well here, also as Steph talked about, getting alerts in your inbox. I mean, when I look at we're using for our dashboards, we're using, of course, getting all the data from BigQuery into Power BI. which means that we're not dependent on Google channels. We can add other data sources, but you can actually, from Power BI, you can actually say, okay, you want to nudge your users to use the dashboard by sending them alerts, and it can be screenshots of the dashboard in their inbox, not just once a week, once a month, but maybe once a week. It could also be that you're actually setting up rules. So you say, okay, if we are reaching some numbers here, you should get alerted by email. So this means also that SEO reporting is not a monthly thing. It's a continuous day-to-day business to understand what's going on in the business. Of course, it can vary from industry to industry, but I don't see SEO reporting as this 5-page report that you hand over once a month. So really start thinking about SEO reporting as a tool that we can use in our daily business. So that's all from me.
Okay, this is my favorite tip of all 3 of my tips. So Google Search Console. If you don't have it, I would highly recommend going to get it. It will give you a little bit of insight of how Google sees your website, if there's any errors. But the fun part is you can see what keywords that you're ranking for and which pages are ranking for that keyword. The bad thing about it is you have to do all those manually. So if you wanted to go into the report, you'd have to look at a specific page or a specific query. And then if you export the data, it still separates it out. With search analytics for sheets, you can see all of it in one. So it will put out a table like you see in the first image there, all your pages and all the queries. So not just one query and not just one page, and then all the clicks and impressions. And then what you can do is there's a formula, which I have to copy and paste every time because it's kind of long. You can get the keyword that is most, either most impressions or most clicks by page, which you can't do through Google Search Console. But this is helpful. So like if you're doing your keyword strategy or looking for some new content ideas or anything like that, you can see what Google is already recognizing your website for. So that's a fun one. Okay, next slide. And Google Tag Manager, I think some people get a little bit scared of this, but it's a really helpful tool for adding things to your Google Analytics that you don't have to know the code for. One of the examples is you can get the scroll depth of a page. So if you want to know there's a bounce rate happening on your page and you're like, I'm wondering, sorry, my Google just went off. If you're wondering why the bounce rate is so high or something like that, if you have this scroll depth piece, you can see how far people are getting down on your page. So if you notice that they're only getting down to 50%, then you can alter your call to action, either add some more at the top or make the content more engaging or something like that. You can also track file downloads, how many people download your PDF, track outbound link clicks. Sometimes this is helpful for affiliate linking. And then you can also, when you embed your YouTube on your website, you can see if people play like 25%, 50%, or all of the YouTube, which that's kind of fun too. One thing about this is I think Google Analytics just put out a Google Analytics 4, and it sounds like they might have some scroll depth features. So if you guys are keen to do that with loading up Google Analytics 4 and then also keeping your normal Google Analytics, you might be able to see something if you haven't used Google Tag Manager, see if that's in the new version for you. And so it's kind of fun. Okay. And then Google Data Studio. So I'm going to touch just a little bit, pretty much kind of recapping what Steph and Christopher talked about in terms of making sure that you're tracking like your macro goals and your micro goals. And it's something that you have to do on a regular basis rather than just every month or when you see a problem. And this is an easy way to pull in all the data from everywhere. So for example, you could have one page with all of your high level metrics. And then on the sub pages, you could have some of those metrics that affect those bigger ones. You can do, you can pull in analytics, Search Console, Google Sheets. And I haven't played with BigQuery yet, but this is sort of like an alternative to that, or maybe it's a stepping stone because I'm definitely keen to try out the BigQuery. I'm so scared to do it. But like, for example, if you have stuff in a Google Sheets area, you can track over time your keywords in a much more friendly interface for your clients or even for yourself. So that's all I have.
Oh, thank you very much, Christopher, Steph, and Barb. So many great tips, and we've got a lot of interaction and comments from the audience. So I'll pass over to Carrie for the Q&A.
Great, thank you. So the first question we have is from Jack. Steph, could you take this one? He says, I'm working for a million paid landing page company. I want to integrate Google Search Console into BigQuery and also use other tools, APIs to get non-demand driven ranking data. Any tips?
Yeah, so I think it really depends on modeling exactly what you kind of want to have as an end product. I think that's the first step with trying to set up any kind of very integrated report, is trying to understand exactly what it is that you want to show and why it's important, because that's going to help you model exactly what you need to link to where and how it should look. As I said before, my most used way to do this is to use Data Studio, purely because you are able to access all of that information either via API or via downloading it from the third party and then linking it as a Google Sheets source. BigQuery is definitely going to be your friend for this, because if you've got a million pages and you have lots of keyword data as well, I would definitely recommend trying to work with BigQuery in that way, just in terms of speed of bringing everything together and to be able to kind of filter and get those insights out of it. Without knowing a little bit more about it, it's kind of hard to kind of say exactly how you should approach it, but those would be my kind of initial thoughts.
Great, thank you. And Lawrence also said that at Authoritas, we help a lot of our clients get data into BigQuery. So feel free to reply to emails sent earlier or email us at support@authoritas.com. And I have a question for Christopher. You said we could measure against the targets. Can you confirm these targets are KPIs the company agrees?
Sorry, I didn't get the last part.
Sorry, that's fine.
What?
You said that we should measure against targets. Can you confirm the targets are the KPIs the company agrees?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's you can say if SEO is part of marketing, then they know what the marketing plan is. They know what sales we have to obtain this year, and we can actually try to understand what do we need of traffic in order for SEO to be a channel which contributes to this growth metric. So it's really about understanding, you know, what can SEO do in order to support the goals. And when you do this exercise, making target metrics, you are being part of the big plan, right? So that's why I'm just encouraging everyone to set target metrics for clicks, for traffic, and not only look at year-over-year performance.
Great, thank you. Reese has also asked, do you have any Data Studio templates that you could share?
For me, or?
Yeah, for you, sorry.
Okay. Well, yeah, I mean, we're doing some projects in Data Studio, but we're mostly working in Power BI. So, and that's, I mean, we're working with some pretty big companies. You know, Steph also mentioned some numbers of working in BigQuery. You really need to have millions of data lines, where Data Studio perhaps is a bit too small for this. But I mean, there are definitely some good templates out there. I think you can probably Google some dashboard templates for Google Data Studio. Perhaps the other participants here have some suggestions for some good templates.
Yeah, I was just going to mention that actually. So the people that I seem to turn to the most when it comes to Google Data Studio templates are Hannah Rampton and Aleda Solis. They both come up with some really good, meaty dashboards where it's quite straightforward to use and to integrate with your own data. And they do them for different things. So, for example, Aleda's done like an international one. I think there's a migration one. There's definitely one around Google Search Console performance and picking out and blending the most important metrics there as well. So I would definitely, if you're not already on Twitter, get on Twitter and start following them, because they're always dropping some really good ones.
And I've used a couple from Blueprint Training. They have some that integrate some of the back-end tools like Ahrefs or SEMrush in terms of the tracking of the keywords and things like that.
Thank you guys so much. That was really useful. And finally, Barb, we've got a comment for you from Stephanie. It says, "Hi Barb, thanks for your insights. Can you please share the formula you were talking about for checking the keyword per page in Search Analytics for Sheets?"
Yes, I don't remember it, but I will definitely, I'll ask to see where I can put it. I don't have it handy. I'll copy paste it, maybe in a comment at the bottom of the YouTube. Does that work?
Yeah, that's fine. We can share it
I'll do
on
that.
Twitter as well afterwards.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, I can do that too.
Okay, great. I think that's all we have time for today. So I'll just hand back over to Joe. Thank you guys for answering all the questions.
Yeah, thank you so much. There's been loads of interaction today, and thanks also to our audience for joining. We have 25 likes of the video, so thank you also for showing your appreciation. I know everyone's given up their time today, and for some it's more busy than normal. So we are back with Tea Time SEO actually next week. It's really about what technical areas you should fix before the holidays. Or so Black Friday for Christmas, but really, what things you should really that are most important for your e-commerce sites. So we have Hamlet Batista coming, Harry Sumner, and we have one place left, so it could be you. So give us, tweet at us or email back Carrie. She sent some emails this week about Tea Time SEO, and we'll also be continuing this in December. We have a couple of spaces left as well. So thank you once again, everyone, for joining. Barb for getting up or working so early, 8 a.m. her time. Big thanks to Steph as well, and the Blue Array team who have joined us, and Christopher too. And Steph, you were doing a lot of work around Google Sheets, I believe, as well before, right? And were Employee of the Month.
Yeah, I did. I found a great hack for importing sitemap XML files directly into Google Sheets. It's on my Twitter. So if you want that and you think it would be useful, then go and have a look at that as well.
Great, thank you. And Barb will also just tweet out to you as well if you could share the course that you've been working on. Great. Well, thank you all, and we'll see you next week, same time, 4 p.m. GMT. For Tech SEO, the issues you need to fix before the holiday season. Thank you. See you later.